Hey guys, it's Nate from the Bike Company. We're going to go through a real quick how to trim your brake lines. It's actually pretty easy if you've worked with hydraulic systems ever at all. Not a lot to it, but if you do doubt your mechanical abilities, you don't want to play with brakes, take it to a professional. So conceptually, here's what you need, here's how it works, here's how to do it. When it works easy, it works really easy. So trimming your brake lines, there's two ways that this typically gets done. One is you're replacing your brakes, in which case you're typically just going to match the length, which is really easy. Or if you're installing brand new, then you're going to need to cut it to a length, in which case on most bikes you're going to want it to where you've got enough length in the hose for maybe a half bar spin. This particular bike has steer stops, so it can be trimmed much shorter because it's not going to allow a full wrap. Ideally, for me, I'd like to see the bars go halfway around before any of my brakes get tight. The first thing that I'm okay with probably getting tight is the adjustable seat post or the shifter. They're probably both okay, but I'd rather that the brakes are not what's gonna fail. So if I crash and spin the bars, I'd like to have brakes the rest of the way down. One trick, if you are rerouting internal cables, this is a brake cable. It's slightly thicker than a shift cable. You bend a slight kink in it, and then you put that into the hose. Now, as far as you put it in, it's going to displace all of that fluid. So, you know, the less you can get in there, the better. If you're going to cut off the end that's got the fluid displaced, it'll make it pretty easy as far as getting your bleed. If you displace a whole bunch of fluid in the line, you're going to have to go and do a more substantial bleed. Now the trick here, so I'm going to remove this rear brake. I'm going to cut it free. I'm going to take my barbed cable. I'm going to put it in there. And then I'm going to pull the brake housing out. And it's going to drag the cable through the bike. And when I go to do it the other way, I install the new brake housing on there. And I push the brake housing, which follows the cable back through the bike. You don't want to pull on the cable, because if you end up like this in your frame, it just became a lot of work, and that's a bummer. So always manipulate the brake housing cable. So along with your sharp cutters, you don't want to be mauling at these things. You want it kind of one snip and done. Make sure that you have all the pieces that you're going to need to replace the one-time use fittings. You're going to end up with a cap, a crush fastener, an olive, and a barb. Another thing, this is from experience, make sure you put them all on in the right order. The olive is a one-time use. The prick and olive are pretty much, once they're crushed together, that's that. I've forgotten the cap a couple times, and basically, obviously it's just an aesthetics thing for the most part, but it's annoying. So make sure that you get everything on in order and you don't forget anything, because it's kind of a one-time thing. So you've got everything in order. You go ahead and tighten it back in, and that's going to crush the olive, compress the olive onto the prick. That's going to give you the fluid tight seal. You don't need to tighten it Herculean tight. In the case of these MT5s, these are composite. You don't want to crack the composite. You also don't want to crack anything if it's aluminum or any other metal. You just need it to bite enough to compress that olive, grab that prick, and be fluid tight. Once you've got this system reinstalled, typically a quick bubble bleed gets you going, and you want to make sure that you have full lever grab. So I prefer the small bottle. I feel like it gives me more control, and I'm able to really manipulate it very gently. A lot of people are going to use syringes. I personally feel like the syringe, I'm not quite as smooth with it, but to each their own. If for whatever reason you're not getting your full lever feel back, you may need to do a full bubble bleed. It's essentially pushing the fluid back and forth. If you're going to do that, I personally recommend pulling the brake off the mount, take out the pads, Make sure your wheels are away from it, the rotors are away. You don't want brake fluid on your pads or on your rotors. That is a problem. So if you were going to do it, you take the 2 syringes and you push the fluid very, very slowly back and forth, back and forth. You do not want to pop the master cylinder. The bladder in here is delicate. So very slowly, and you're looking for a little bubble to come out somewhere. It's a good practice to rotate the caliper while you're doing it. Make sure that you get it spun around in case there's a bubble hiding somewhere. Get it to where the high point is the exit. And keep an eye on it while you're doing it. A lot of times you're going to see the bubble and there was your problem. From there, you seal up the caliper. Check that you've got the proper lever feel and got a good bleed. Seal it up, make sure that everything's working, and you're out on your way. So again, if you have any questions on any of these, find a professional. Don't be a hero with your brakes. It's not a good plan. But overall, something that should be in your arsenal, especially if you can take your bike on trips. You'll be able to correct an issue and get yourself back out on the trail.